Last week, a whole bunch of us, Doris Ray, Andrea, Joanne, who's not here, Mohammed, Kevin and Carol, June from St Anthony's, Christine, Joyce and I went to Durham Cathedral. We went to see Jane Easterly, who spent the last 3 months of training with us. She was ordained as a curate at Durham Cathedral by the Bishop of Durham. And just as an aside, when we were there, we met with Chantal and Tony and maybe Tobias. And I have some photographs of Tobias. Tobias was an absolute treat. So after the service, we'd like to have a look at them. During the service, a sermon was delivered by the Reverend Canon Carolyn Worsfold. And I make no excuses for borrowing some of her thoughts from my own sermon today. She started with some statistics. Apparently, in the National Census of 1911, there were 1.275 million people recorded as being in domestic service. If you like working as servants, the upstairs and downstairs, the Downton Abbey. That was more than the 1.2 million that were in agriculture, and the 975,000 who were working in the pits. She went on to point out that by the Second World War, that number of people in service had disappeared, gone. She based her sermon on the passage from John 13, where Jesus, recognizing that his time on earth was drawing to a close, washed the feet of his disciples. Simon Peter protests that Jesus should not be doing this. But Jesus is teaching them an important lesson. And the passage finishes with these words. Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for that is what I am. So if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have set you an example, that you also should do as I have done to you. Jesus was making the point that we all understand that he was sent among us to serve, not to be served. And Carolyn picked up that theme in her role for the 80 curates ordained at the service, urging them during their curacy to go out and learn how to serve, to learn from those who do serve, waiters and waitresses, shop assistants and bar staff, to learn from those who care for others, care home and hospital workers. Now, we all recognise that service is never easy. We live in a society where, as I've mentioned before in my sermons, we want it all and we want it now. And many people today are much less tolerant and much less patient. Does anyone remember the Reader's Digest? Does it still exist?
Yes.
No,
yes,
it does. My dad used to subscribe to it. And I used to look and read the letters from the readers. I used to find them fascinating. And I remember some of them from many years ago. One in particular was from a nursery school teacher. And that's a particularly challenging type of service. She was helping a 4-year-old put on his winter boots. She pulled while he pushed, and still the boots didn't want to go on. Finally, after the second boot was on, and after she'd worked up a sweat, the little boy said, "They're on the wrong feet." She looked, and sure enough, they were on the wrong feet, and getting the boots off wasn't any easier than getting them on. But she managed to keep her cool, and together they put the boots on the right feet. The little boy said, "These aren't my boots." The teacher bit her tongue. She took the boots back off, and the little boy said, "These are my brother's boots. My mum made me wear them." The teacher didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but she mustered all of her grace and courage and wrestled the boots back off his feet. She wrestled them back on his feet. When she'd finished, she said, "Where are your mittens?" "I put them in the toes of my boots." Service to others can be tough, and that brings us to today's Gospel reading in Luke. Jesus has appointed 70 others and sends them out in twos to every town and place where he himself intends to go. He's sending them out to serve, to cure the sick, and tell of the coming of God's kingdom. In the Gospel of John, you may remember, Jesus says, "As the Father has sent me, so I am sending you." Now here he is, commencing a movement which will become the Great Commission for all to join. This was the Father's blessing being restored by Jesus. To follow him is to join the calling, and that's pretty important. He is bringing the call on his life of being sent by the Father to everyone who will receive it. The whole point of what we encounter in this morning's Gospel is this: the Father is calling us to join what he is doing. I tried to imagine what it must have felt like. It wasn't like leaving school and starting a job. It was all about being called to join in the redemption of the world. Imagine how that would affect them. And think about that, how that should change us. The appointing, commissioning, transforms the very meaning of their lives. And in what unfolds, we discover what the Father wants us to do, now and every day. As Jesus goes on to say, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into his harvest field. Go, I am sending you out like lambs among wolves. He finishes with, do not take a purse or bag or sandals, and do not greet anyone on the road. It sounds a bit radical. Do not take a purse or a bag or sandals. Many think he's probably speaking in strong terms to make a point, and many believe he's referring to taking only that which would keep them from being dependent. He's essentially saying travel light, don't get bogged down with baggage. And I think some of us have a good idea of that challenge. We might understand the challenge of not being too bogged down with baggage. We perhaps realise that our lives are shaped more by comfort than by mission. When he says greet no one along the road, he's not telling them to be rude. He's warning them against engaging in the Jewish custom of long and elaborate time-consuming greetings when meeting people on the road. He's telling them to get on with what they have been called to do and not let anything turn them aside. Don't let life become so cluttered or get so caught up in the social world that we forget what matters most. Jesus goes on to say, when you enter a house, first say peace to this house. If a man of peace is there, your peace will rest on him. If not, it will return to you. Stay in the house, eating and drinking whatever they give, for the worker deserves his wages. Do not move around from house to house. And when you enter a town and are welcomed, eat what is set before you, heal the sick who are there, and tell them the kingdom of God is near. I think we need a bit of cultural understanding here. It may sound a little foreign, even weird, and it probably wouldn't be appreciated if we walked into a stranger's home and announced, peace be on this house. But in those days, it was not uncommon for travellers to have hospitality extended to them. And the declaration of peace was that which spoke of the Hebrew understanding of the ultimate peace, which is meant by the Hebrew word shalom. I think what Jesus is pointing out is that those who cared little about such peace might dismiss it, but those who sought such peace would welcome them and what they brought. The message we bear is of word and deed, show and tell, if you like. The message is that of the blessing and calling of God's restoration of his kingdom. And when we understand that underlying principle, we can understand this is still the essence of the message that we are asked to carry. I think our culture has a problem with what we believe in, our idea of truth. I think a lot of people feel that their problem with those of us who believe in Jesus is that we think that others should as well. The very word gospel simply means an announcement of huge meaning, usually of change that brings a change to all. That is what the first disciples were appointed to be, messengers of this change. That's what we are appointed to carry, a message of change. It's important to see that Jesus speaks of staying in relationships, being in homes, sharing food, staying in one place rather than moving on too quickly. And a personal relationship is essential to our message. We are told that the 7 returned with joy and said, "Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name." Jesus replied, "I saw Satan fall like a lightning from heaven. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven." And here comes the wow moment. The realization that they and we really are part of what the Father is doing. Jesus is telling them and us that the authority which they and we have been deputized with cannot be overcome. But it's vital that they and we understand that they should try what should truly fill our hearts. Jesus warns them not to go on rejoicing over the outwardly spectacular victories. He says, don't rejoice in your performance and think that you now have something special or superior about yourself. Jesus knows how insidious such pride can become. When somebody finds or begins to find their sense of identity in their religious robes. He tells the 70 that their names are written in heaven. He's telling them that their lives are already accepted into eternity through Christ. But the disciples need to remember that while it's true that we will be with the Lord forever, it's not because of anything they have contributed, but because of His grace. They must never forget that they are not fundamentally different from those whom they are carrying the message of the gospel to, and neither are we. There is our motivation, the blessing of having received eternal life through Jesus Christ. Amen.